Can everyone please silence your cell phones? Good evening. Thank you all for joining us tonight in tribute to the 11 martyrs who gave their lives in the attack at Pittsburgh's Tree of Life Synagogue. Over 300 years ago, Huguenot families fleeing religious persecution in France settled in an area that they called New Rochelle. At around the same time, Jewish families fleeing the Spanish Inquisition settled in Newport, Rhode Island, where they founded one of the first American synagogues, the Touro Synagogue. Following the American Revolution, the leaders of that congregation reached out to George Washington, seeking reassurance that the place that they had come to know as a safe haven would remain so. Washington answered, famously assuring them that the United States would give bigotry no sanction. He said, "May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while every one shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid." Over 300 years since the Huguenots came to New Rochelle seeking religious freedom, the children of Abraham have flourished here under our own vines and fig trees. Thousands of Jewish communities like ours have thrived in the safe haven of the United States. And so, when 11 Jews were murdered in Pittsburgh in the deadliest Jewish attack in U.S. history, we were shocked and heartbroken. But we will not be afraid. Tonight, we, the Jewish community of New Rochelle, many hundreds of families represented by 6 different synagogues of varied denominations, have come together to memorialize the victims of the attack. 11 beloved individuals who died in their house of worship and were buried 30 days ago. We have come to remember them and their sacrifice. The Talmud states, Kol Yisrael arevim zeh bazeh. The Jewish people are all responsible for one another. We thank everyone here for coming tonight to honor the memories of our brothers and sisters. In our unity, we reaffirm the very thing they died for, their Jewish identity. May their memories inspire us in our commitment to each other and to the Jewish people. Please rise now for the national anthem.
No mistake can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, with broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. O'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
From the very beginnings of Judaism, anti-Semitism and anti-Semites have been the enemies of the Jewish people. Our long history is clearly blood-stained. In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 30 days ago, anti-Semitism once again reared its ugly head. 11 wonderful people that we just saw were brutally murdered in their synagogue during prayers. These 11 bright lights had their lives extinguished. They were massacred only because they were Jews. So we have gathered together this evening, all of us, united in our common heritage, to remember our fallen brothers and sisters. This coming week, we will celebrate the Festival of Lights, Hanukkah. We will light the candles of the menorah, the Chanukiah. These lights, the lights of the menorah, represent so much to us. They recall the miracles of Jewish survival, surviving the onslaught of the Greek Empire that sought to extinguish the light of the Torah. The lights of the menorah symbolize the triumph of good over evil, of righteousness over wickedness. The lights of Hanukkah also attest to the eternal quality of the Jewish people. And we are an eternal people. Even Leo Tolstoy, a devout Russian Orthodox Christian, wrote in 1908, "The Jew is eternal. The Jew is the emblem of eternity. The Jew is an everlasting. He is eternity itself." And indeed, he was correct, because Judaism is a ner tamid. It is an eternal light. From the burning bush of Moshe that could not be extinguished, to the menorah in the temple, as the rabbis teach, Edut b'ba'ei olam she'ashkina shara b'Yisrael, an everlasting testimony to the world that there are godly elements in Judaism, and that has to be preserved. It cannot be extinguished. And so when we light the menorah this coming week, let us reflect on the lives of those 11 wonderful people who contributed so much to their community and to the world. When we gaze into the lights of Hanukkah, let us remember that they, the lights of Hanukkah, bear testimony to the eternal qualities of goodness and righteousness, knowing that even a little light, these 11 points of light that we memorialize tonight, can dispel and banish much of the darkness of evil and hate. May they find peace in life eternal, and may their memories be a blessing. Amen.
Shloshim is an important part of the grieving process. It serves as an emotional buffer, providing space for us to rediscover how to interact with the world when tragedy and death envelop our lives. Shloshim is far enough removed from the initial pangs and shock of loss that we can reflect on our grief in a way that perhaps wasn't possible during Shiva, but still close enough that the sadness of loss is fresh in our minds and hearts. So as I reflect on the past 30 days, even though it is still difficult to articulate the complexity of my feelings, more than anything else, I feel sad. I am sad for a community much like ours that I was fortunate enough to call my spiritual home for 5 years. I feel sad for all my former students, that the place where they went to feel safe and to connect with their Jewish friends is forever tainted by violence. I feel sad that a place of friendship, a place of learning, a place of growth, a place of Torah study has been violated in such a heinous and grotesque act of cowardice. And most of all, I feel sad for the victims and their families. Good, hardworking, decent people, some of whom I have known personally, whose lives have been upended by callousness and hatred. But despite my sadness, I also feel a tremendous sense of hope and pride. I am proud of the Jewish community for living up to the rabbinic aspiration, as Dina said, that Kol Yisrael Arevim Zel Hazeh, that all Jews are family, and that an attack on one of our communities, whether it's in Pittsburgh, in Israel, or in France, is an attack on us all. And I am hopeful that our community will continue to stand arm in arm as one. I am proud of the countless people from other faith traditions who showed up in support of the Jewish community, to hold us in our worst moments, and to lift us up in a time of great vulnerability and fear. And I feel hopeful that there are far more people who love us than those who seek to tear us down. I am proud and thankful for all the first responders and police officers who moved swiftly into action and who risked their lives to help protect the remaining congregants who were lucky enough to survive. And lastly, I am proud of the city of Pittsburgh and its residents for teaching us what it means to stand united in the face of hatred and bigotry. In the wake of these shootings, we have been privileged to witness a tremendous capacity for human kindness, which I imagine to be nothing less than the majestic reflection of God's divine image. Normally, shloshim serves as a marker in time, a signal that we ought to re-enter the world in order to move forward with our lives. But in reality, we know that's impossible. When we suffer losses that shake us to our core, we know that there will never be the same again. All we can do is hope that we have the strength to carry on in a way that would make those we've lost proud of us. This is our task now. Yeh Zichron Baruch. May the memory of the Pittsburgh 11 be for a blessing for us all.
Please rise. שיר למעלות, אשא עיני את הערים, מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי עם אדוני, עושה שמיים וארץ. אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומריך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן, שומר ישראל. אדוני שומריך, אדוני צילך, על יד ימינך. תורם השמש לא יככה והרך בלילה. אדוני שמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם.
שיר המעלות ממעמקים כי רסיך אדוני, אדוני שמע בקולי. תהיינה אוזניך קשובות לכל תחנוני. אם עוונות תשמריה, אדוני מי יעמוד. כי עמך סליחה למען תברא. כי ביסי אדוני כרצון נפשי ולדברו הופעתי. נפשי לאדוני משומרים לבוקר, שומרים לבוקר. יחל ישראל אל אדוני, כי עם אדוני החסד והרבה מלכותו. והוא יפדס ישראל מכל עוונותיו. Please be seated.
had just returned from a sabbatical, and so I was not in New Rochelle on the Shabbat when this tragedy occurred. It was difficult to not be here with all of you. I was in Lexington, Massachusetts, and found comfort from the Jewish community there, but it was not the same. At Shabbat following the tragedy, the synagogue in Lexington, as many did here, opened their doors to the entire community, encouraging people to bring friends. My parents' best friends, active in their Episcopal church, drove an hour to attend with us. Our neighbor, who attends her Catholic church every Sunday, was sitting next to me. And on the other side, my parents' best friend. I spent the service sitting between them, simultaneously pointing out, "We're there. Turn the page. We're there. Nope, we're there. The book goes the other way." The image of them diligently following along and diligently repeating after the rabbi the words of Hinei Matov U'Manayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad, how good and pleasant it is when sisters and brothers dwell together. That image will stick with me forever. But again, it was hard to be away from New Rochelle. So I am filled with gratitude to be able to say Hinei Matov tonight, how good it is to be with all of you. In the days following the attack, I had a desire to be here, to celebrate and affirm the strong Jewish life in our community, to affirm the resiliency in the face of tragedy, to affirm that diversity is something New Rochelle treasures, to affirm that we also treasure diversity across religions, cultures, and races, and tonight we remind ourselves that we treasure diversity within our own Klal Yisrael. Now approaching Hanukkah, I read the Thanksgiving message of Rabbi Myers of Tree of Life Congregation, who wrote that the needs of others did not disappear on October 27th. The needs of others remained, and we must not forget them. So approaching Hanukkah, this reminds us that we have an obligation to bring light into the world and to rededicate ourselves to the values treasured by those who died. As inspiration, I share a modern Ma'ot Tzur for Pittsburgh, written by liturgist Alvin Solvey. Ma'ot Tzur Yeshuati, Rock of Ages, Fortress of Redemption, Rock of Salvation, Refuge and Shelter. L'cha na'el l'shabeach. It is a delight, lovely and fine to sing your praises. Tikon beit tefilati. Restore this house of prayer, this house that saw violence and hate, bloodshed and death. It is firm and established now and forever. V'sham todah nezabeach. There we will offer thanksgiving in the name of our people, and or l'simcha, a light for joy, and eitz chaim, a tree of life. Le'eit tachim matbeach, when by your will all bloodshed ends, the time when you eliminate all slaughter. Mitzor hamnabeach, the furious they assail us, oppressors with hatred, but your arm avails us. Az and more b'shir mizmor, so with joyous song, yet still in mourning, with a heavy heart, yet singing in music, in poetry, and psalms, Chanukah Tamizbeach, for the dedication of your house, the rededication of your sanctuary, an altar of your praises, where our strength will not fail us. May our strength not fail us as we shine light into the darkness. King Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will.
Growing up in the 1980s, suburban Long Island, nice Jewish community, we were taught implicitly and explicitly that Jews are a beleaguered people. Bad things can happen to us on account of our ethnic heritage and our religious identity. And so we observed Yom HaShoah and Kristall Nacht, and we recalled the martyrs of the Holocaust. We observed Yom HaZikaron, remembered the fallen soldiers of Israel, the victims of the First Intifada. We marched for Soviet Jewry, and some of us even marched for Ethiopian Jewry. But there's a common denominator for all those things. And that's all those victims, or martyrs, lived in a different generation or in a different continent. Yes, schwer zu sein a Yid, but not for us. It was simple. Life was clean and pleasant. Bad things didn't happen to us. Always to the Jew who lived a while ago in another part of the world. That's not the case anymore. The picture is darker, the security measures are tighter, it's a different world. Many of us in this room believe in American exceptionalism in two ways. One, as good patriotic citizens, like everybody else, American exceptionalism. But as American Jews, there's another layer. And that is we understand that our experience has not been the same as those who were a generation or 2 or 3 or 10 before us, or for that matter of Jews who live in other parts of the world even to this day. American exceptionalism. But there's an exception to the exceptionalism. And we now know bad things can happen even here. And it'd be naive and foolish to think otherwise. Happened in Pittsburgh, it could happen anywhere else. And so we take the requisite measures. But I believe enough in American exceptionalism to tell you that despite the darker days, I'm confident there can be brighter days ahead. That as a country and as an American Jewish community, we can see better times. And so, with that more positive thought, I pray that the martyrs of Congregation Tree of Life shall find rest in their eternal portion and may be spared from any further tragedy. At this time, I want to call upon Miriam Liederman, a member of Congregation Anshe Shalom, sadly whose aunt, Joyce Feinberg, was one of the 11 martyrs of Tree of Life. Miriam.
Thank you, Rabbi Hoffman. As part of the program tonight, I was asked to recite the following poem titled In the Rising Sun, adapted from the original by Sylvan Cadence and Jack Reimer. Afterwards, I will be speaking a bit about my beloved aunt, my father's sister, Joyce Feinberg, Aleha Shalom. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of the winter, we remember them. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of the summer, we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So as long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. I grew up in Toronto, and my youngest memories of my Auntie Joyce were receiving presents in the mail every birthday and Hanukkah. She would never miss an occasion. That remained true even until as recently as a couple of months ago when Auntie Joyce sent my daughter a first birthday present. She had emailed me a few days prior saying it went through her cart too quickly and didn't have a chance to click gift wrap. Of course, I told her not to worry, and my 1-year-old would be just as happy, and we were so thankful. The next day, she emailed me again that she got a confirmation the presents had shipped, but accidentally were on the way to her address. So she canceled the order, and when she reordered it, she made sure to click gift wrap. She was so giving, thoughtful, and caring. She did not have a judgmental bone in her body. And when it came to Jews who practiced differently from the way she was brought up, she went out of her way to be lovingly accommodating. A few days after we received my daughter's birthday presents, a card arrived in the mail, explaining that she was concerned because the presents she bought were electronic. So just in case we didn't feel comfortable with our baby playing an electronic toy on Shabbos, she enclosed a check that could be used to buy a toy more suitable. In our family, everyone knew that Auntie Joyce was always doing everything for everyone. She was extremely sensitive and would go far out of her way to avoid hurting or embarrassing anyone. One of the many times she visited us in Toronto, she stayed in our basement. Only after she went back to Pittsburgh did my mother notice that Auntie Joyce had bought us shampoo for the guest shower, because apparently there was none down there. She even bought and hung up a new shower curtain too, because it was in need of replacement. She didn't even say anything. She just went and did. My sister lived in Pittsburgh for 3 years and just moved away this past summer. I would speak to my sister all the time, and she constantly said how much Auntie Joyce was helping her and just doing everything she needed without even knowing she herself needed it. My Auntie Joyce would bring her groceries, cook Shabbos meals with her, be a babysitter at the drop of a hat, all without needing any recognition or praise whatsoever. My sister even said there were so many times she thanked her husband for taking out the garbage or washing the dishes, to which he would respond, "I didn't do that, but Auntie Joyce was here earlier." Auntie Joyce treated all of us like we were her children and grandchildren, even though she had children and grandchildren of her own, who she cared so much for, and to whom she devoted so much of her time. We are not only recognizing her qualities in her death, we recognize them in her life too. When I would tell my father that I had just spoken to my Auntie Joyce, he would often say, "Isn't she just amazing?" And she truly was. She was so wonderful. And she is so missed. This was the type of person who the world lost 1 month ago because of hate, which is the opposite of what she epitomized. Although her tragic death was at the hands of darkness and evil, we can take the exemplary model of her beautifully lived life and commit to ourselves to try to make this world a brighter place by performing acts of chesed and living her legacy. My father said in her Levaya that evil tried to shut off the light, but the light refused to be dimmed. As we light our Hanukkah candles in a couple of days, they will shine bright. And may the light be in Aliyah's neshama of my Auntie Joyce, and to all the Kedoshim who died on Rosh Hashanah. Thank you.
Last week I had the privilege of walking the streets of Jerusalem. And it was late at night, and there were security personnel that were checking some cars to make sure that everything was safe. And I walked over to one of the gentlemen, and I said, "Is everything okay?" He said, "Yeah, no, everything's fine. We do this, it's a normal routine security check that we do, each night to make sure everything's okay in this part of Jerusalem." So I said, "Where are you from?" He said, "I'm from Pittsburgh." And I stopped. I said, "You're from Pittsburgh?" He said, "Yes, I'm from Squirrel Hill." And our eyes locked, and we embraced. And I said, "I want you to know we're thinking about you." And he said, "I want you to know it means so much to me." And I said, "I want you to know that it's so meaningful to me to be able to embrace you here from Pittsburgh in the streets of Jerusalem." And we bid each other good night. To know that we are so connected as a people, thousands of miles away. There are Jews in Jerusalem that were riveted and just as horrified by the massacre in Pittsburgh. And to know that there are people from Pittsburgh that are in Jerusalem whose hearts are so connected to us here in the U.S. And I think it gives us hope. Where there's so much that divides us. We're about to read a parsha, the eve of Shabbat Parshat Vayeshev, of sibling rivalry, of brothers fighting each other within their own families. To know that a place like Jerusalem, like Yerushalayim, that has such a tremendous capacity to unite, but to understand that in such a deep and tragic way it divides, and to know that those divisions exist around the world. It's heartening to know that sometimes there are things that can bring us together. And we are a people that's destined to be together. And I thank Young Israel and Rochelle, Rabbi Fink, Rabbi Axelrod, and the lay leadership and the Intershul committee that brought us here together to understand that at the end of the day, even here in the United States of America, in our beautiful little city of New Rochelle, we only have each other. May we continue to lean on each other. May we continue to remain together. L'man achai v're'ai akaber la shalom bach. L'man beis Adonai Eloheinu v'aksher tov lach. Adonai oz v'amo yitein. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. May God bless us with strength and with peace together. Please rise for the Kilmali Rafa.
Kilmali Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamsim Nuchon Echona Al Kanfei HaShechina במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע המזהירים אס נשמות הקדושים והטהורים שהומסו ושנהרגו על קידוש השם בעבור שאנחנו נותנים צדקה והזכרת שמותיהם בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים ושמותיהם אדוני מונח לעשם ינוחו בשלום המשכבותיהם ונאמר אמן.
You may be seated. Joyce Feinberg, Richard Godfrey, Rose Mallinger, Jerry Rabinowitz, Cecil Rosenthal, David Rosenthal, Bernice Simon, Sylvan Simon, Daniel Stein, Melvin Wax, and Irving Younger. Yehi Zichron Baruch, may their memories be a blessing. We take a moment for reflection. Use this opportunity to reflect on the gift of life, privilege of the Masorah we've inherited and to reflect on the pain that so many of our brothers and sisters are dealing with. For those who would like to recite the Mourner's Kaddish, it's located on the back of our programs. Yikadal, Yikadash, Merava, Yalamad, Yibrach, Yutei, Yamlich, Machutei, Chayefon, Yomechon, Chayei, Chobeit Yisrael, Vagala, Bizman, Karim, Yimamei, Yehei Shmei, Rabban, Torah, Olam, Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitbahar, Yitromam, Yitnaseh, Yitadar, Yitaleh, Yitalal, Shmei, Kudshav, Yechud, Yehiram, Yikol, Birchata, V'shirata, Tushbachata, V'nechamata, V'hamiran, V'hamad, V'yomameh, Yehei Shmama, Rabban, Yishmaya, V'chaim, Aleinu, V'yokol, Yisrael, V'yomameh, Oseh Shalom, V'yomamav, V'yasa Shalom, Aleinu, V'yokol, Yisrael, V'yomameh.
As a lifelong Yerushalayim, I can only reiterate how compelling, inspiring, and uplifting and breathtaking it is, having all of our shuls come together tonight, albeit to commemorate this unspeakable tragedy. May the treasured memories of the 11 victims always endure as a source of blessing and strength for their families, the Pittsburgh community, our New Rochelle community, and Klal Yisrael. Yehi Zichram Baruch. Please join me now as we conclude our community's shloshim observances by raising our voices together as one, singing our people's anthem of eternal hope, Hatikva. Kol Ba'era B'nima Nefesh Yehudi Omina U'fatem Mizrach Kadima Ayin Letzion Sophia Yerushalayim, Liotam Chofshi,